This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. We appreciate you tuning in. The economy has been battered in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Unemployment has risen and fallen, remains high, 8% at the state level and 11% at the national level. But those numbers don't tell the whole story. Congress is considering new legislation as their earlier rounds of stimulus are set to expire at the end of July. It's not clear what may happen. Randy Zook with the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce and I sat down to discuss what he sees as a path forward. Would you agree that testing delays, and contact tracing are the biggest impediment to us getting a handle on this COVID-19 situation right now?
You know, I won't presume to know all of it, but obviously the testing delays are problematic. If you've got an employee, for instance, in a business that suddenly says, hey, I've got a headache, I've got a sore throat, blah, blah, blah. Okay, you run over there and get a test and you're in limbo until you get the results. Well, that's really a challenge.
Yeah.
Do you send that person home because it's a normal deal, or you let them come back to work because it's maybe something besides COVID-19?
Well, you have to err on the side of caution at
you
this
have
point.
to. You're forced to do that, and a lot of businesses don't have short-term disability payments for employees. So there's some real challenges that are driven by the fact that you can't get a timely test, and that's why a lot of people are seeking out these Abbott Labs tests. The good news I got from Joe Thompson this morning is that if you take the Abbott Labs test, if it's positive, you are positive. The other side of it is if you're negative, you still have a 15% chance of being positive. So the positive is proof positive.
Right.
If it's negative, you still got a crapshoot.
It's not foolproof. Are business leaders that you talk to, are they frustrated that we are 5 months into this pandemic and we still don't seem to have a grip on it? When you look at other countries around the world that have gotten ahead of the curve on this, the U.S. is not. I'm not pointing specifically to Arkansas. I'm just talking about as a country. Is that a frustration that you hear from a lot of folks?
No, I don't. I don't hear that at all from anybody. I hear that, gosh, we're a big country. We've got everything from Montana to New York City Metro. So, we've got a big range of possibilities and circumstances. And we are a free people. Let's not forget that. We're paying a price for that in a lot of ways in this situation. But at the end of the day, we still are a free people, and we've got a lot of hard-headed free people.
Yeah.
They're coming around, I think.
Yeah.
I'm encouraged that the masking thing seems to be going better than I would have predicted 2 weeks ago. I was up in North Arkansas this weekend and went in a couple of restaurants. Everybody in there was abiding and sticking to the rules.
Yeah.
So that was good.
What about when you're up in Melbourne? Is it?
As a matter of fact, I was in Melbourne. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Northwest
Absolutely.
Arkansas.
I was, frankly, I was blown away. That was a 180 from 3 weeks ago.
Congress is debating a lot right now in terms of what they may do for, I think, what is a fifth relief package, if my math is right there.
You lose count after several trillion.
Not clear what will materialize, but I want to hit a few highlights of what's being talked about. I want you to give me a gauge of whether or not you think this is where the business community is in Arkansas, or just your sense of if this would be good or bad. PPP, should we do another round of the Paycheck Protection Program?
Very likely, especially for the hardest hit sectors. Now, it has to be more carefully tailored, and it can't just be a wild, wild west. Anybody that fills out the paperwork gets the money. But the hard hit sectors, travel, anything to do with travel, anything to do with hospitality, restaurants, bars, gyms, anybody like that has, through no fault of their own, no bubble in the economy, no creative destruction, they just got clobbered by the foreign virus, I'll call it. And we need to make sure, and it's a big employment source, so we need to make sure those folks have a fighting chance.
Yeah, I think the hospitality sector, if I've read something from Bloomberg recently, more employees than construction or manufacturing in the U.S.
Yeah. It's the largest single sector, I think, aside from government.
So what about stimulus payments? There's talk, I think, that there might be another $1,200 payment to people below a certain income threshold. That is obviously in anticipation of them spending it and keeping some consumer spending going. Do we need another round of stimulus in that respect? And is there an income level that you think is maybe ballpark?
Well, I think, say, something like $60,000, below that, you could make the argument that we need to sustain demand and to keep the gears turning. I don't think you'd have much pushback about that. I think the big focus for most business people is around unemployment insurance.
Well, that was just my next one that I was going to let us
But I'd tee it up
So
for
there
you.
is the $600 unemployment extension benefit there. It benefited people beyond their
Supplement.
unemployment benefits, the
Yeah.
supplement. Should we do that again? Should it be the same, or should we not even do it at all?
It definitely should not be the same. It definitely, if it's done, and I think it's likely that something will be done, but if it's done at, say, a $400 a week level or a $300, and then another ramp down maybe after January, February, March, somewhere in there down to a couple of hundred, businesses would live with that. We have to do away with the disincentive where you've got people making more not working
Yep.
than they made when they were
Still
working.
does act as a stimulus, though. They
Oh.
are spending that money.
Well, yeah, but that's like, if you break out all the windows and replace them all, that's a stimulus. Not very constructive, but it's a stimulus.
The president wants a payroll tax deduction. It doesn't look likely at this juncture that that's going to happen, but do you agree or disagree that that would be a good something to put in place?
It would have been, but the ship has sailed. We're too far into this calendar year. Payroll tax reductions for a lot of employees run out when they reach a certain ceiling on their income, so the benefits for it would only apply to the wealthiest people or the highest income people right now. So it would have been a good idea if we had done it in January or February, but we may have to come back to that in some down the road point.
I know you support limiting liability for businesses. We've done through executive order here in Arkansas, but they're talking about that at the federal level as well. You've heard the arguments against that what's the recourse for some of these employees that are put in terrible situations? Why do you still support this limited liability? Why is that necessary based on what's already on the books?
Well, if you're a small business owner and you're out there, struggling with the idea of whether you're going to re-up and reinvigorate your business and get it back into gear, and you've got the real possibility of just a out of the left field claim where a wrongful death suit even, or a class action of some sort that assigns liability to the place of employment as the only place that you could have picked up the disease, that's not a fair relationship. And what we need on a national level is not long term. It needs to be timely, it needs to be temporary, and it needs to be targeted. This is a talking point from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, incidentally.
So let me push back.
That's not my invention, but
let me push back a little bit on that. You're not going to have class action lawsuits against small businesses. You're going to have
a group of small
class
businesses.
action against a big employer, a Tyson Foods, a Simmons Foods, some of these big ones right here. You get the arguments though that are out there against doing that, don't you? You might not agree with it, but
I don't agree with them at all. I think the employer deserves to have continued coverage and protection from an assumption that if you work in a place, then that's the only place you could have picked up the virus. That's a tough case to make. We
do seem to be having some trouble as to where these cases are originating from. I mean,
well, I would
for the
make
governor's explanation on that. So
I would make the argument that a lot of the employees of those companies have social practices and family and cultural practices that make them very vulnerable. Multi-generations in one home, lots of folks living in a single residence, lots of partying, lots of, just grandma and grandpa are keeping the kids and all that kind of stuff, which lends itself to infection from the disease.
Let's shift gears and talk politics. You and I got to sit through a webinar about kind of what's happening in the presidential race with the electoral map, Congress, as well as the U.S. Senate. Kind of what are we in store for?
Man, I wish I knew, but I can tell you this, there are going to be about 20 to 25 cycles in the next 100 or so days. And somebody pointed out the other day that their early voting starts in some places as soon as like 5 or 6 weeks from now. So this thing is coming at us full force, and it's going to be a Donnybrook. It's going to be just a bloody, knockdown, drag-out fight. And I think it'll change several times between now and then.
Yeah. The presentation that we listened to laid out that there are some key states that if Donald Trump doesn't win those states, it's pretty much game over. It was Texas, Georgia, Florida, North Carolina in the mix.
Arizona and North Carolina.
Yeah.
5 states, and then there are 4 where Biden has the same vulnerability
all
or
up
the
there in
same
the Midwest.
challenge.
Yeah, Minnesota,
the
Wisconsin,
Great Lakes states.
Yeah. Pennsylvania.
So
and
there are some clear spots to watch. The one that got me was Maine. Maine suddenly has the capacity or the possibility of being the determinant in some, long drawn out rigmarole where we end up in the House of Representatives. It's just crazy what the possibilities are. You can't make this stuff up.
No. Odds are right now that the Republicans have probably a little bit stronger position of holding the Senate. It's not a guarantee.
I would say it's close to a jump ball.
Yeah. Democrats look pretty decently positioned to hold on to the House, but they're likely to lose some seats, was kind of the takeaway there. So do you think it is better to have divided government from a business perspective, or would you like to see everything in alignment in terms of political parties?
Whatever keeps government constrained the most is the very best that business can hope for.
So you're voting all libertarian this year, is what you're...
Man, there may be some logic there.
There are some ballot issues in Arkansas that for sure there's going to be a highway program. I know you're a big supporter of that. So when are we going to start seeing some activity on that front? And
Labor Day.
Do you think this is still a good enough climate with the economy where it's at that people will vote to put a permanent 1/2-cent sales tax increase on themselves?
Robbie, I think it's even more important than ever that we get predictable, reasonably adequate funding for the highway system. It's the lifeblood of Arkansas. Everything from manufacturing to farming to schools to service businesses. Employees have got to be able to get around. Kids have got to be able to get around on buses. Customers have got to be able to get to stores. The delivery companies have got to be able to get to residences to deliver a lot of stuff.
With COVID-19, we're not driving as much as we used to.
No, we're not. We're not, but we will.
Do you see this as being a potential jobs program as well? I mean,
well,
I could see that being an argument as we can put people to work in the construction industry. You think there should be anything that specifies there needs to be more focus on Arkansas-based companies?
No, that's a formula for disaster. That's a formula for, you need the most competitive, low price, high quality provider of any services possible. No, we just don't need to go there.